Welcome to the AI Silicon Valley podcast, where we cover all the topics related to AI, artificial intelligence. We are in the heart of Silicon Valley here in Palo Alto, California. This is podcast number 14. My name is Eric Nelson, and with me today I have my co-host Rajesh Karam. Today is, what is it? It is Friday. Friday, January 31st, 2025. I got to take a check here. It's like end of the week. We're here. Normally we're on Mondays, but there's been so much news going on. Thought we would cover it. So here we are, Friday afternoon, doing a live stream. What are we going to talk about? AI InfoWars. There's just so much going on right now. Stay tuned because we're going to talk a little bit about the Deepseek model.
Yeah.
How much CPU do they really use? There's some news out on the fact that they had a lot of GPUs out there making that model to begin with. So we can talk about that. And then we'll talk about the new OpenAI offer with reasoning models that was announced just today. So we thought we'd do this show today to talk about that. And then, a lot of use cases and other things. So join us for the hour. We're here and we're going to just talk AI. So Rajesh, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Derek. I think I'm super excited for today's live stream. There's just a ton of stuff going on. So, this week is, I think the start of the show is Deepseek. Last week, I think it was Stargate, maybe.
Yeah, and now it's clearly becoming InfoWars because they're just talking about stuff and everybody. I think the reason OpenAI did an announcement today is that they had. Yes. They had a week to try to get out a response.
Yes.
And I think that DeepSeek had a week from the Trump announcement on the Stargate stuff from a week before. So now we're going into these week news cycles, right? On who can announce bigger, better, cheaper, faster. Right?
Yes.
So I think it is. The title of this is AI InfoWars because I'm not sure any of it is real anymore, right? If you dig under the covers, some of it's real, but some of it's a little bit, PR related, right? Don't you think?
I think there's so many different angles, right? There's geopolitical angle, there's an open source angle, there's open source versus closed source angle, right? There's stuff about like how did DeepSeek make its model so well, right? And then there's shades of gray there. What did they do, right? How much was it ethical, not ethical, etc. So, there's just like a boatload of stuff for us to, I think, unpack. Right. So we could potentially, I don't know if there's enough. There's probably hour and more kind of worth of material here. We should structure this a little bit and then kind of go over one by one. I think maybe Eric, we start with the markets, right? Like NVIDIA lost $600 billion in market cap just in a single day this past Monday, right? Maybe that's a good starting point. And that was precipitated by the fact that DeepSeek topped the charts, the App Store charts. That is how it broke into public consciousness Monday morning or late Sunday night, So maybe we start from there. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that we all woke up and looked at our stock and went, oh my gosh, and at first I was like, oh no, don't. But then I'm used to this kind of stuff. And then what I tend to do is say, well, this is a buying opportunity. These are things that nothing really changed, right? Just news cycle. And I think the capital markets, look and like to take advantage of these downturns, right? And the automated trading platforms pull out of the market, right? Talk about AI, right? AI's been in trading platforms forever, right? And agentic models that are, watching things and then taking action based on market trends. And so they all pull out and everything goes crashing down, loses 20% in a day because the AI trading systems say, oh, look, it's a trend down. And then, sure enough, everybody waits, and then they buy back in once the news settles. And this has been going on since I was in high school. I remember reading the newspaper that had all the stock prices, and I used to be a charter when I was in high school.
Charter?
So, I would chart all the stocks, right, that I wanted to track. And I realized that if you could avoid the one-day downturns, right, you could easily make 10% on any kind of stock you wanted to by just paying attention to when the downturns were going to happen and getting out and then getting back in. Now that's day trading, right? But in the real sense, I feel like the news cycle was such. But then on the other hand, I feel like AI has been overvalued, right? There's a lot of hype, to how much is, again, they're investing billions of dollars.
Right.
And so, when is it always what is it? What do we call always
always investigating?
right?
Yeah,
when does it
yeah,
actually turn into
yeah.
to some of that? So
Yeah.
I guess what was the fear that there
Yeah.
was a legitimate fear on the models? Can we drill into like what
Yeah.
Deepseek did that made everybody panic a little bit?
Right. I think that's a good, maybe that's a good sort of slicing in into the sort of problem. What DeepSeek did seems like, right? So I don't know. Should we talk about? Okay, so they said so. DeepSeek started by a hedge fund quant trader, right? The model released by the company, I forget the name of the company, in China, right? A small group of people, and put out this model in open source with the weights and like complete disclosure, right, of what they're doing, really, right, so that other people can replicate it. What they said, right, is that hey, with just $6 million, we were able to build this model and match O1's performance. O1 is the open source, not sorry, like OpenAI's reasoning model, right? Okay. So the fact that with just $6 million you're able to do this is like, oh my god, how did you do that, right? Like, is the first sort of.
So they claim they built this model using only $6 million, and that it matches the reasoning response of OpenAI that spent it.
Billions of dollars, right? Like billions and billions of dollars. So the first point here, I think it's important, and maybe we can talk about it now, is that according to at least two people, Scale AI CEO Alexander Wong, and Dylan Patelia from Semi Analysis, right? Well-respected folks. They think these guys. DeepSeek has access to at least 50,000 H100s, and they have been accumulating, right? Like they have been building a data cluster since 2021, long before restrictions on NVIDIA chips came into effect. So that's one, right? And two, even after the export restrictions came into effect, they may have been obtaining some of these chips from from Singapore, right? Like as a middle as a third party, so to speak, right? To go around these export restrictions, right? So and the number being floated is that, I mean, the scale of that would be $500 million, right? So so this is not exactly a $6 million effort. Is the sort of, so there's a lot of skepticism around that number, right? Having said that, I think there is widespread agreement, it seems like, even among well-respected technical researchers, if you will, right, that it's a good model, it's an innovation, it's a breakthrough in what they're doing, right? And seems like what they've done is really this is in some ways creativity under resource constraints kind of thing, where because of the lack of just like brute force compute that's available, right, to companies like OpenAI or Anthropic here, what they have managed to do is look at lots of different things and in the computational sort of stack, and reduce a cost. So one example that I know of actually is that the floating point calculation around number of decimals. So usually, apparently, you look at 32 digits after the decimal, like whenever the LLM is going through traversing the decision tree, right? Like neural network. Now these guys took only 8 digits after the decimal, for example, right? And will make a big difference, right? They did some other improvements that will make a difference. So overall, because of that, they were able to get a lot more, right? So that's number one, right? This is all legit, right? And definitely things that I think Meta and OpenAI and Google are looking at, saying, hey, how can we replicate this? What do we need to do, etc., right? That's one part of the equation. The second part of the equation that sort of this came into light a little bit later in the week was that they may have done what is called as distillation, model distillation, which is they created a model by pinging OpenAI's own reasoning model to get output, right? So ask a question, get a response. Ask a question, get a response. And using that, you basically build a model, right, that replicates OpenAI O1, so to speak,
right?
But with smaller amount of compute used, etc., right? So that is against OpenAI's terms of service, actually, right? Which says that, hey, you can't use our you can't use our model to build a competing model, right? Like, which makes sense. Which makes sense, right? Now that criticism is being, I see that it's being kind of addressed in different ways. So, for example, David Sachs, the new sort of crypto and AI czar with Trump under Trump's administration, he's like, hey, OpenAI definitely probably is not happy about this, and Deepseek is cheating, right? So great, right? That's one point of view and legitimate. While folks in the open source world, like Yann LeCun, Facebook's sort of AI evangelist, he is kind of taking a slightly different take. I see, he's not directly criticizing it for sure. Dario Amadei from Anthropic is calling this more like, hey, costs are gonna, the whole thing we are seeing with DeepSeek, he's like saying, hey, this is just a cost reduction. This is a point in the cost reduction curve, and it's inevitable. It's going to happen, kind of thing, right? So there's some different sort of, what do you call, interpretations to what's going on, but certainly they were able to benefit from somebody else's hard work, so to speak, right? And it was not an open source model. It's not like they trained their model, they did their model distillation on Meta, right? Some other open source model, then it'd be completely sort of legit. There would be no problem, right? So bottom line, there's looks like the new techniques that they have put out, DeepSeek has put out, is actually beneficial in the sense that it's actually moving AI forward, and other people are going to kind of use and replicate it. That's number one. Number two, it does bring into question of, hey, the stuff that you've done is really, going off of the investment dollars that have been put in by OpenAI, for example.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, that's what I had heard as well, is that it was a model using other models, and that you really couldn't replicate that, other than if you were a commercial user and you didn't mind that you paid to use ChatGPT's model to build your own private model,
right?
And that the way they built this private model maybe would apply to commercial companies, not enterprise, but commercial companies that just wanted a medium, small instance of an model. AI. Let's say I'm a noodle maker and I want to make an AI that focuses on noodles.
That's right.
I wouldn't have to build a giant model. I could just build and then have it local, because I can't use OpenAI's public model.
Right.
So I build my own model, then get it good enough, shut it down, put it on prem, and it's a local prem. I got open so I can run all this locally on my machine, and I can buy a single 3090 GPU from NVIDIA, and then I can enhance my model with my own data. But it gives you a start. So it addresses some of certainly NVIDIA's market, because NVIDIA will sell GPUs to commercial companies. They want to have their noodle AI, right?
Yes.
But now they wouldn't necessarily have to. It takes some of the lower model market away from NVIDIA, right? And so I think that's maybe why NVIDIA dropped as much as, and certainly Microsoft and others who sell AI services to commercial companies. All of a sudden there's a model that I could maybe build my own model out of everybody else's model. Maybe I buy the APIs, but to some degree, I also agree with Trump's guy, which is that, but if it's against terms of service, that ChatGPT is going to shut that API usage down. They're going to look for patterns to do that, and then they're going to block them, right? And
see, that's the kicker here, or needle in the haystack sort of problem. OpenAI does in fact have distillation capabilities, to your point, right? So I can go find, create your own SLM sort of, which is also hosted on OpenAI. Of course, you can't, host it locally. But so that is one sort of swim lane. The second swim lane is the thing with API calls, of course, right? They don't really know who is using it for what, but of course, with pattern matching, I mean, one report that came out was that OpenAI engineers found some anomalies, and Azure OpenAI folks found anomalies apparently dating back to September of last year, where they saw some abnormal patterns. So they're investigating that, right? So that would be the sort of violation of TOS if you're using it to train competing models, I guess. So, but why did, NVIDIA lose $600 billion in market cap, 20% down in one day? Broadcom, same case, 20% down, right? So total of about 1.3 trillion lost in one single day in market cap. I think the deal was that what came out is that using these more efficient techniques for training, you wouldn't need as much compute. That was the sort of the main value prop, or the main sort of contention. And so you wouldn't need have as much of a need for GPU chips and so on, right? So which is why NVIDIA dropped. Now, the contrast to this really is what folks, what is called as a Jevons paradox, right? And which is that as costs come down, right, usage goes up, basically. And because of that usage going up dramatically, exponentially,
right,
overall the consumption is actually going to go up, right, is the point. So NVIDIA, if you were to indeed need lesser number of NVIDIA chips for training, as consumption increases, you still need them for inference. And then if inference, if more and more people are going to leverage these models, then overall NVIDIA is probably going to benefit, right? And that's most likely the case, right? If we look at just announcements around data center infrastructure in this past week, right? Like Meta announced plans to build a huge data center. Oracle has announced a data center which can, in Larry Ellison's words, it can hold 10 Boeing 747s, like head to tail kind of thing, nose to tail, right? So large data centers, right? Now, those plans have not really changed just because of DeepSeek. Now, that is where I think the market got it wrong, right? Or rather, it was an overreaction, right?
Sure.
So I don't, if we were to look at this logically, honestly, even as a user on ChatGPT, if you just take ChatGPT voice, right? Most people, well, I shouldn't say most, but out of the 300 million weekly active users, I would ask how many of them are using ChatGPT voice. Probably a really small sliver, right? Like maybe 1, 2, 5% of those users. And you can do like super amazing things, right? Like, I used it this week to point it to like a South Indian thali, which is a food plate,
right,
and it was able to tell me exactly what's on the plate. And I was conversing it with in regional Indian languages, straight off the cuff, in Kannada, in Marathi, in Hindi, right? And it's able to switch easily. I don't even have to give it like any sort of preface, right? It was able to tell me how many calories is there in each dish. And it was even able to distinguish between two things that look identical. Like even a non-Indian would have a hard time figuring out two things that are different. It was able to tell me, like, so brilliant, right? Like, so there's a lot of things you can do with ChatGPT voice and using the camera to point at a particular thing, right? Now, all of these, like, if a very small sliver is using it right now, imagine like 6 months from now, a year from now, that percentage is going to go up dramatically. The needs, inference cost, again, same thing, right? Like the amount of data center infra that OpenAI would need on the back end for countering all these things will just increase. So, bottom line,
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Right. So we've talked about Deepseek, right?
Yeah.
And what they announced, right? Which started off this tumble, right? And the news cycle when we talk about InfoWars, right? And the news cycle that happened, Deepseek caused it, right? Well, actually, Trump started it. Again, we said already with what was it? What's the name of Stargate, right? And so Trump started with Stargate. Now Deepseek came out, right? And Mark Andreessen called it a moonshot, right? Because
Sputnik moment.
a Sputnik moment, right? Because it was a cheaper model, significantly cheaper, and this could be the start of the lowering of costs when people actually look like, hey, do we have to go 20 digits out, or could we get the same results with 7 digits out, right? And that's just calculation time, right? So then now OpenAI has come back and they did an announcement today. So let's talk a little bit about their
OpenAI's announcement. Yeah.
In the InfoWars.
Yeah. So from a PR standpoint, I see two things happening, right? Yesterday, they released there was a there was news that OpenAI is raising their latest round at a $340 billion valuation. Okay, now that round is probably just kicking off, but like that's a large number, right? Like, and I don't remember the last round was that at 140. I don't remember now, right? But it's like a very significant markup and like a crazy amount of scale.
And they're wondering why America has inflation. I can imagine why. Right.
It's insane, right? Like so that's one sort of PR, if you will, right? Like
but that's not the one I was talking about, and nobody really cares now how much they raise for capital. So what did they do that impacts me and you on a daily basis?
Sure.
Let's get to the one that care. I don't care about that. I'm tired of talking about billions of dollars that people raise or don't raise.
Don't raise or don't raise.
What did they announce in the InfoWars?
So today, just 2 hours ago, actually, 2 or 3 hours ago, I think they have released a new model called O3 Mini and O3 Mini High. I think that's what it is. And if you log into ChatGPT right now, at least I got a sort of a pop-up, right?
So before you get too much into it, if you're using ChatGPT today, like I am, I come in, I never even selected a model. They must just have a default model that it uses when I log in.
Yeah.
Is there a place to choose a model then?
Yes, there is on the top left, at least in mine. Mine is an enterprise subscription, but on the top left, you can actually choose the different models,
you can usually choose what it's doing.
Yes.
And then some of them require you to have a paid account and some of them are free.
So until now, I think the reasoning models, if I'm not wrong, were not available on the free plan, right? Like anybody logging in is potentially, I think, if I'm not wrong, it's like one. But now I think as a response to DeepSeek, because of the fact that
you go too quick for my brain to keep talking. So I'm logged in, I've got my ChatGPT. If I've got a paid enterprise account, I can choose a model. What type of models do we have currently? There's two types, right?
Okay. All right. So we have reasoning models and we have quote unquote non-reasoning / normal models, right?
Okay, so I would normally be just on a normal model.
Normal model, you'd all normal, you'd be on a normal.
What's the difference between a reasoning model and a non-normal model?
That's right. That's right. So I think in a normal model, the model has been, of course, pre-trained, training, fine-tuning, everything has happened. You ask a question, it's going to come back, right? And these models are now, of course, getting enabled with search engine in the back end, right? Like, so it can even potentially retrieve some real-time search results, right? So that is your quote-unquote normal model. Okay. Now the reasoning models actually are going to do, when you ask a question, they're going to think, so to speak, reason a little bit with your question before it goes out and just goes and retrieves information. So it's gonna think through what you want to do and or the question you've asked.
Will
and
it
then
ask another question? Will it get clarification?
Not really. Not yet. It'll probably that's probably coming up.
But it's at least thinking about it.
It's thinking about it, and it even can outline what it's thinking, and then will come back with a response. Like that's exactly how DeepSeek is doing. I was testing it this morning, right? Like so. So the reasoning, it can outline the reasoning for you and then actually go do the thing, right? So what happens is during inference, right, during runtime, it is consuming more resources and to do the thinking and then coming back with an answer. Versus in a normal model, all the effort has been spent in training already, right? Like all the dollars.
It already has that. Whereas reasoning, it's actually going to do some thinking in real time.
That's right.
Which means you're using GPU resources right then to try to calculate a response.
Correct.
Versus just spitting out what I've got in my database.
That's right. Exactly. Right. So that's, I think, the key sort of difference, and like what you call agents and agentic workflows, etc., kind of fall into this sort of reasoning model category, right? You need reasoning models to think through. If you want to book a flight from point A to point B, the thing has to think through, multitude of different options and, right, possibilities of going from point A to, to two places, doing a hop, one stop, etc., right? Like a whole lot of things. So that's the reasoning. That's the big difference between reasoning and non-reasoning models. And DeepSeek is firmly in the reasoning model
What percentage of people think are actually using reasoning versus non-reasoning models?
So there is a latency, right? Like if you try it in ChatGPT, there is a little bit of latency.
But my guess would be that 90% of their 300 million customers per week,
probably
all of them are using the non-reasoning models, right?
Probably. I think it would be a reasonable guess. It would be a reasonable guess. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where it stands right now, right? Like that's the difference, right? And the fact that they have released it now as in the free ChatGPT version, sort of is a way to, I mean, we don't know how many users DeepSeek has on the App Store. I don't know, right? Like, but like a lot of model providers, for example, are all providing DeepSeek. It's an open source model, right? That's being provided as a backend. And if your cost is, I think the cost. So I think we didn't talk about the cost, right? Like, I believe it's like 160 at the cost of O1.
I don't think anybody's using DeepSeek right now.
No. I mean, I just deployed a model earlier this afternoon, right? Like, no, DeepSeek is available. Perplexity has DeepSeek, for example, in your backend. You can run it, your searches using DeepSeek. So, no, people are.
So within a week, people have reconnected their backends to this new thing that was announced.
Yeah, because models are being released weekly, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, you have to have that infra for sort of switching models easily. So DeepSeek is another open
I'm
source
not buying
model.
that. I don't believe that. That's not true.
I no,
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. If I have a production environment, right, and I go into like Salesforce, or I go in something right now, and I've got something that I'm using AI to make recommendations on my website, or I'm doing something. I'm not going to switch over in a day or two.
No, you're not. I mean, if you're a private, you're not as a private player.
A commercial, yeah. No, I'm just like, I'm a commercial player and I got a website and I've tied it back to an AI, right? And I'm doing some AI. I'm not going to switch that over in a day or a week.
No, you're not going to. No, you're not going to.
Right.
I agree. Well, not in a month. No, you could switch things in days,
but you're not going to do that because you got tests and you got customers and you're not going to do that.
Yeah. No, but there's two. But there's two.
Switch anything in a week.
No, but Eric, there's two kinds of sort of players here we've talk about, right? Like one is, so for example, PipeIQ, right? Like is a application provider, is an application layer play, right? And I'm serving something to end customers. I got to make sure that any model I hook in the back end, it better work well, right? Like for the output it delivers, right? So that's
you're not going to switch that over in a week.
Yes, you're not going to switch. You're going to do all sorts of testing. Now, think of the middleware, like LLM middleware layer, right? Which is the in between layer between the foundational model layer and the application layer. Now, these are model serving providers, right? So these guys like Hugging Face or Fireworks AI, Together AI, etc., right? All of these folks, their job is to provide you a model catalog, right?
Yes, that I agree that the model catalog people will make it available to anyone. But who's actually using it? The model catalogers aren't using it. They're not the customer base. They're like the middleware.
Yes.
Right. And so I get the middleware. We go, oh, look, we've got it. But how many people are actually going to go switch their model right now and use it?
Yeah.
Probably not that many.
Yeah. Perplexity, I'm not sure. Perplexity, I think, has DeepSeek via the API, but maybe even on the front end. I'm not 100% sure. But Arvind Srinivas, Perplexity has a knack for sort of staying in the limelight.
Yeah.
And definitely,
I think everybody
this
would
is like a PR.
That would be like a PR thing.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Perplexity hooked it to DeepSeek to see how you could choose. You could set Perplexity to use DeepSeek.
Yeah, but the cost saving is very significant, Eric. I mean, so I believe it's like 1/60 of the cost or something like that. Like really dramatic improvement in cost, right? So if you actually get the same kind of output, like hey, I mean, it's a compelling argument, right?
Maybe.
So
maybe.
But yeah, I mean, your point is taken, right? Like you have to fine tune the thing and make sure it works okay for what you're needing to do, right? So it's not just that you're gonna make use of it. So I think this is really like a big deal, right? The other kind of testing I did, by the way, is and other people have tried this too, right? Like if you bias right in the model, right? So given that this model has been produced in China, or built in China rather, right? There's definitely a bias in which it sort of has to comply with quote unquote Chinese sort of.
Yeah, we all have to do that.
The CCP,
Not allowed to ask our APIs, our AI about sensitive topics in the U.S. like COVID vaccination, right?
Is that right? Really?
Yeah. No,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, okay.
We block the federal government blocked Facebook and a bit blocked Google blocked. There was all kinds of things. YouTube blocks all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, Market Research has been talking a lot about censorship actually.
Right. Now we're backing away from that over time, right? But nonetheless, I stay out of the censorship space because we're no innocent children as well. Right? We've done our share in the U.S. on censorship, right? But you can assume that every single thing we interact with a computer, there's probably some censorship somewhere in the back end.
Right.
And there's probably some monitoring as well that they're watching for things, right? So
interesting point.
I will say that. Point. But, all right, so you answered my question on OpenAI. Yeah. Well, we didn't talk now. Now we talked about the two models. What did they announce then? Because I stopped you because we were talking about what they announced, but we never really got to that.
You mean the OpenAI?
Yeah. What did they announce?
Yeah. So the O3 Mini and O3 Mini High.
Which
now
is, what is it?
I don't know the difference between those models.
No, but what did they announce?
Basically, you couldn't reasoning models were very expensive to use, right? Like so. I can't, like, as is PipeIQ, for example, I had to use O1. I mean, I'm going to be paying a lot of money, right, to run those models for inference in the back end, right? Like, first of all, for training, for fine tuning and inference, right? So I think this is OpenAI's first sort of opening shot at, like, hey, we are going to give you a free, a Deepseek competitive version.
You almost got to the announcement. What did they announce? They announced it was
a Deepseek competitor.
No. They announced that their reasoning model 3 is free. That's the announcement. Thank you. You never got to the announcement. You kept talking about the tech and I had to talk about the reasoning. Now that we understand the difference between the models, reasoning versus non-reasoning, and the fact that, reasoning was always expensive, and they've now come out because DeepSeek went, oh, look, we're free. Now OpenAI has come in and say, well, our reasoning free, model 3. Model 3 of our free reasoning model is now free. Free reasoning and
O3,
free. All E.
Yeah, all these numbers are pretty confusing, actually. They are.
Well, which is now InfoWars, because all of a sudden we're going to drive it down to the bottom price, right? Okay, they're free, so we'll be free too.
Yes. I mean, now I think over the past week, again, I think there's widespread agreement and recognition that I think it's in hyper competitive, and the foundation model layer is like a really hyper competitive.
You know why I'm laughing? Because you had mentioned OpenAI talked about the billions of dollars they were raising, right? You mentioned that, and I don't care about that. Do you know why they announced that this week?
Well, just to, again, toot the horn about
because Stargate mentioned last week that they were going to raise $500 billion, and everybody's joining in how many billions everybody's raising. So this week it was like, oh, well, we're going to raise billions too. Everybody's how many billions each other is going to raise.
Right.
Now the news cycle, InfoWars always starts with news cycles. Every week there's a new news cycle. So this week is our model's going to be cheaper than your model, right? So everybody's going to talk about how low. Pretty soon they're going to be, next week they're going to be talking on how their model uses less digits, than everybody else. Oh, we can do it in 7 digits, 7 point, we can do ours in 4 points, right? Like pretty soon we're going to do it just integers, right? No floats, right? Just our model just uses, don't even need a GPU. You can just use a regular CPU. You don't need any math at all for ours, right? So. And that's just news cycle, right? That's not really relevant.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to really, I think, tease apart everything. I mean, there is one thing that's going for OpenAI undeniably here, which is they have 300 million weekly active users, right? So it doesn't matter who comes up with any bigger, better model, et cetera. They have a huge base that they can work with.
Well, and that gets us back to the original market fall, right? When the market fell on Monday, I was like, hey, nothing has changed. Our customers haven't changed. We're still selling exactly what we used to selling last Friday. And, the InfoWars and the news cycles are not affecting what people are actually doing day by day, right? Which is why I question you on, everybody's now using DeepSeek. And I'm like, I don't think so.
No.
Nobody's changed. Nobody's changed the market yet. Right.
Yeah.
This is all just InfoWars and responses to InfoWars.
Right. But it is also true that models, newer and more efficient models, seems to be released like literally every week or like every few weeks. So
I think that's the normal curve.
Yeah, that's the normal curve, right? So that'll continue. Right. It's just DeepSeek is the one sort of in the limelight this week, right?
And because it hit App Store in Apple. And who knows how that happened? And then Mark Andreessen called it the Sputnik moment, right? And then everybody focuses like a squirrel. Right? All right, so that answers that. So that's OpenAI, right?
Yes.
Those are that's where I would say the OpenAI has settled, and now they're just starting on the free reasoning models, and where will this all go now? Right?
Yes, I think the OpenAI and everybody else calls 2025 the year of agents, and I think that is not going anywhere. I think that's a very reasonable or that's the trajectory in which this whole thing is going, meaning multiple agents reasoning with each other, agents talking to each other to go get some stuff done, right? Like to get some outcomes. So I think that is definitely the direction, and for that you just need better, more efficient models. So.
And then what comes to mind for me and this whole news cycle is that we talked about this in earlier podcasts where we talked about how hard is it to adopt the technology, right? Like you looked at Google and PipeIQ looked at how easy is it to actually use? Because one, how smart is it? How good is it?
Right.
2, how expensive is it? And then 3, how easy is it to onboard and use as a piece of software, right?
Right. Right.
And I'm curious whether Deepseek is actually whether that was a consumable service.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I think these. I mean, I don't know enough about serving open source models and what it takes, but I mean, looks like fast enough at least, right? Like within a 7-day time frame.
I know someone came back and put it on a server in their place, right? Got it up and running.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, honestly, like just like I was running some of these models on Fireworks. I was running. I actually was.
So you ran it.
Fine tuning. Yeah, I was fine tuning it just this afternoon. Serverless, right? Like so, super easy. Meaning, I mean, that could be true of any model. Doesn't need to be Deepseek, right? Like so, I take a model, fine tune it, deploy it, right? Like so, Fireworks is actually doing all the hard work, right? Like so, from an end user. But this is, I'm not.
What is Fireworks? Is that like
Fireworks
a SaaS
AI
service?
is Fireworks AI is a startup that is like this model provider, right, so to speak, a model serving middleware, and the founder, one of the founders, is Ling Kao. She's one of the co-creators of PyTorch. So she's ex Meta. So that's and PyTorch, of course, is right. Like so, that is sort of the background there. So
you didn't have compute on-prem using your model. You were using SaaS compute. Right?
I was using SaaS compute, right? Exactly.
But from what I understand, from an open source perspective, you can go get the model.
That's right.
Put it on your local machine.
You can.
And run it and have no costs, no cloud costs, nothing. Just it's all local. Right?
It is.
I don't know how
local.
big a download it is, right? Like whether you download the DB model and how big it is. I want to say it wasn't that big.
Yeah, I believe I believe with Deepseek you can run on a MacBook Pro is what I'm told. But I'm not 100% sure.
And I think you download the data set itself, right? Like, do you download the whole model, or is the model
the model
up in the cloud?
No. You download the whole file and the model, right? Okay. You download the file and then I think
with
you
all the
instantiate. Yes.
Right.
And then you instantiate it on your machine, right? And then you can do the tuning. So I think what these guys do, right, like these middleware providers, they abstracted away all the complexity for a person like me, right? Like, I mean, I wouldn't know exactly what to do if I had to run it locally, for example, right? So this makes life easier for someone like me to go experiment, play with it, right? Actually, use the playground to see what kind of responses it gives. Like I asked, hey, what happened at Tiananmen Square? No response. Right. I said 9/11, boom, there was a big response, right? So just to understand different things that what the model can or cannot do. I mean, and it was super surprising actually. I asked it to. It seems to have been trained on a lot of data. It had access to, right? Like it gave me a nice blog post about PyPyQ, for example. So it seemed to know a lot about PyPyQ, which was surprising, without access to real-time search. So I'm assuming it's been trained on all the internet data. So that was an interesting finding for me. So,
well, as we cruise along here in the podcast, I think that there is, it's fun to see all these InfoWars. It's fun to see the models. It's fun to see acceleration technology, which, and then there's, adapting it, right. And, as a company owner, you have to figure out where you're going to stay, and as we said originally, always investigating.
Right.
You can get caught up in always investigating, and you lose sight of the fact that you actually have to run a business and provide customers value.
Right.
And you can't keep chasing your tail every time a change or somebody does an InfoWar update. Right.
Of course.
So there is that. Then I transitioned to kind of like, all right, what are the use cases for this? Are we seeing interesting use cases? And you touched on one earlier today, which is OpenAI voice, right? So that's a new one. So maybe we could just explain. You just rambled through it really quickly, but what is OpenAI voice, and why is this significant?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, if you install ChatGPT on your phone, for example, right? And when you open the app, you'll see, even on the laptop, actually, right? Like you'll see an icon, right, where you can type, right? There's an icon there where you click on that, it goes into voice mode, right? So then you can now actually have a voice conversation. So whatever you type, you can now talk to the AI, right? And it'll come back with a response and so on and so forth. So it's a back and forth conversation. Now, the interesting thing about doing this on the phone is that your phone has a camera. So you could actually use ChatGPT, start the voice conversation, and then start the camera that's available in the app, right? I mean, as an icon, and you start that and point at something and ask the AI for answers, essentially. So I used it the other day to figure out how to connect like a external hard drive, right? Like to my
no way. So
yes.
it integrates with the camera, and you can say, "Hey,
Yeah.
take a look at this and tell me what I'm doing wrong."
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I did that.
What's wrong with this?
I did.
Right.
I had to my wife wanted me to capture some photos from an external hard drive from like 4 years ago. And I was trying to get into my Mac, and the Mac was not recognizing it. And I pointed it to it was a Seagate hard drive, I think, and it came back with some answers that really were helpful. Like, hey, this needs to be reformatted, but if you reformat, you're going to lose all the pictures. It might be formatted for a Windows machine, and so
just trying to figure out what it needs to do to help you get through that.
Yes, it's like
moment.
It actually right. So that is insane, like really good, like kind of value, right? And when I pointed it to my dish, my food plate, well, the number of calories it told me that had like got me thinking a little bit about whether I should
it did
eat
that
it.
as well. So it did a calorie assessment.
Absolutely, calorie assessment.
It's looking at the image and telling you what you're looking at.
Exactly. I mean, so this is really mind-blowing feature. Like, I mean, and this is just scratching the surface, right? Like, I mean, so the Seagate hard drive.
You do a selfie and you say, "Tell me about myself. What's wrong with me?"
Right? That's a good one.
You're like 45 pounds overweight, and you have high blood pressure. Your eyes are dilated. Like, it could be interesting things, right?
It's absolutely. I mean, I think there'll be a lot of interesting stuff.
And that'll be where Google Glass and some of these things actually get really interesting. Is when you marry. Google Glass. Somebody
Ray-Ban Meta's Ray-Bans, right?
I was at the NFL party last Sunday, and we were watching a game, and the guy had the Facebook Ray-Bans there, and they were. I didn't even know they were anything other than sunglasses. They looked like a regular pair of sunglasses. Maybe a tiny bit thicker, but not very much.
Right.
And he says, they're great at playing music and the audio. He says the audio is fantastic. There is no visual in front of the sunglasses. So I did not know that. I thought it was a heads-up display on the glasses, but the Facebook ones are just all audio. Yeah. They just have a speaker, a microphone, and it's an AI that you can talk to.
And then that's exactly the same logic that I'm
play music, and he says it's great playing music. You're in the car and you want to listen to something, you just
But it also the Ray-Ban has cameras, right? Like, so that's the same use case that I'm talking about, right?
Tell me what you're looking at.
Yeah, tell me what you're looking at. So that's more. I mean, it feels like that's more of a.
I thought it was a heads up on the sunglasses too, but they don't have that. That's coming, but that's not right there right now.
Right. And I don't know about the heads up, but it feels like a tourist sort of use case, right? Like, I'm going out, I'm looking at a building or something, and then tell me what it's about, right?
I think it's more than that. To your point, right? Like how many calories on my plate right now?
Yes,
right?
Exactly. If I'm eating it,
is this guy a murderer? I need to know, right? But he said he loved the audio aspects of it, especially in the car. He's like, it's just so nice to be able to, ask it a question and get an answer. You don't have to take your hands off the wheel. You don't have to look at your iPhone. You're just talking to that voice that's right there, and it's right in your ear. So, no one else so the other problem I've always had with the audio is that everybody's listening to it, right? Like in your room, right? Like, but with that, it's just you and your glasses, and you can't hear what the glasses are saying because it's right up and right near your ear. So they do that.
Right.
So that's actually pretty impressive.
It is. I
watched that, but here's the kicker of this. He's like, yeah, let me demo it for you. Here, I want you to hear it. It's so fantastic. And he gets them out of his pocket, and he says, "Oh, they're dead." They were. This is the land of mobile devices, right?
I know.
With small footprints. So the iPhone has a big enough footprint that you can have a big enough, lithium battery that lasts all day. You don't get to, but the glasses still have that problem. Right?
Yeah, my demo failed as well. I was showing this to somebody last night, like, hey, with the impressive capability of it being able to detect the food. It did a fantastic job with the Indian food that I was showing it, but then I showed it like a bit of hummus on a plate, and unfortunately it couldn't recognize it. It was like, it's a piece of bread. Like, it's a shit. Okay, so my demo sort of failed, but anyway, it's I think there's some really
obviously I just say that because it's just a funny joke, right? Like, got the smartest glasses in the world, but if the battery's dead, then
there's nothing. You're toast.
It's just a pair of sunglasses.
Right.
That's
Right.
what it was. So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
pretty neat.
So this goes to the point. I mean, just quick one on the Jevons paradox, which is, we are going to see like usage skyrocket basically, right? And as that happens, right? Like, I mean, just the kind of compute need and consumption that would be is astronomical. So, I mean, again, along with NVIDIA and Broadcom and others, I mean, even the nuclear power reactor stocks dropped big time as well. So on that particular day, about 30% or something like that. So I don't think the need for nuclear reactors is going to, I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert. I have no idea of how much power, etc., is needed. But I think it's safe to assume that both power needs and data center needs will just continue to grow with what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, interesting. I had an interesting use case this week as well. I got a notice on that my home, which I do not have a loan on, right? Was going into receivership, right? And it was a piece of registered mail that came to my post box, and it's tax season in the United States right now, where you get a lot of tax notices. You get these little standard 4-inch by 8-inch, envelopes that, look kind of bigger envelopes. And this one had the green certified letter across it. And so I was like, oh, and I opened it up, and sure enough, it was a letter from a company that specializes in doing, filings with San Mateo County or, Santa Clara County courthouse. Right. And here it was, a filing of the courthouse that they were, trying to take over my house, right? You're like, and you hear these stories like this, right? That are going on, and you're like, oh my gosh, right? And you look, and it's all pretty real, like 3 or 4 pages deep, and it had an $8 U.S. postage sticker on it, which meant that they actually paid money to register it and send it to me. But the weird thing is, it didn't require me to sign for it. And almost all registered mail, if you put it in a mailbox, that means they can't prove I got it, so it's not really registered. So I'm like looking through this, I'm like, but I'm like, I better call people and find out what's going on, right? Like, my banker, like, how did I don't even have a loan on my house, right? Like, I paid my house out. I live in Palo Alto. I don't need this, right? And it finally dawned on me, I Google searched the company name, right? And I didn't get anything, right? Like, just I said, let's go to ChatGPT and ask it, like, what's going on with this company? And I, take a picture of the forms, right? Submit it all. And ChatGPT came out with like all that was wrong with this, right? Like, oh yeah, it had been filed with the Better Business Bureau, blah, blah, blah. And these are the type of scams. This went on and on, right? Like, I read like 4 pages of what Google OpenAI's ChatGPT actually told me all about this thing, right? And you're like, okay, there you go. I don't have to call a lawyer, right? I just have to have ChatGPT there at my fingertips, and then I get the response, and it's great. And that's the use case that you don't really think of. You don't think of, oh, I should point my camera at my plate and see how many calories are here, or oh, I should. If I got a piece of mail I don't trust, just give it to your AI and let your AI figure it out for you, right?
Seriously.
And those are the kind of things that when that gets automated, right, when it's embedded in the browser, where the browser is just automatically going to do this, then this is just going to be the way we work in the future.
Yeah, I think there's this is just scratching the surface in the sense that we are not even talking about hardware, right? I mean, Mr. Musk yesterday in I think Tesla's earning call mentioned that you'd be interested in, Eric, that they're going to launch Optimus by the end of the year or something like that, right? Like,
I'm definitely going to buy one as soon as one comes. I don't know what I'm going to actually do with it. I have a couple of use cases I'd like to do.
Putting your laundry or folding the clothes.
No, I got some stuff. I want to, when they got really tiny fingers, I got some little electronic stuff I want to sit around.
Okay.
Just tell, hey, go assemble these, right? Come back a week later, and there's just a big pile of them.
Right.
And all I had to do is plug this guy in every once in a while. Right? Like that's going to be impressive. I got to say that when you start doing assembly, I've done product assembly, and when you're building things, even on my honey jars, right? Like I have bees and I harvest honey, and then I have to put labels on all the jars.
Sure.
Like it just put here's 500 jars.
Right.
Start putting labels on them. Right. And then unscrew the lids and put them on here, and like there's a whole bunch of tasks that I'd be like, okay, go make this happen, right? And as soon as you can get one of these guys to sit around and be my AI robot, I'm all in. I'm all
You're
in
all
for
in.
that. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so you're one of the. You should get yourself on the wait list. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know that
just
one.
as soon as they publish a wait list that I have to give them, $1,000 to get on the wait list. I'm gonna go do it because
Yeah, Musk
I want to
loves
be on
people
the
like you.
bleeding edge of that
Bleeding
guy.
edge. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
the
the
bleeding
early.
edge.
You're an early
Yeah,
adopter,
yeah.
basically.
So
Right?
much so that I wanted to go buy the Asian one,
Yeah.
which doesn't really look like it's gonna.
It's gonna happen.
You go ask ChatGPT about the Asian robot and all the people that come, and they give you a list of a mile long of what's wrong with that robot.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have to worry about the fact that it's coming out of China, going by.
No, right? Yeah, it is coming out of China now. If you start looking at the tariffs, are going to be everywhere also. So it's like, oh my gosh, things are going to get expensive quick. The world is changing.
Right.
I don't know how much, but maybe it's all just info wars, right?
Infowars. Yes.
How much of this is info wars versus how much it is reality. I would say that getting legal advice, looking for, like I did, I got subpoenaed or whatever it was. I did. It was a fake subpoena, but nonetheless,
Right.
You just go to your AI, and your AI just works it all out. You don't need a lawyer, because that's what I thought. Now I'm thinking, anytime I need a lawyer, just go to ChatGPT, and you got the answers. It's like getting a lawyer.
Your
but
first
then,
cut, anyways. Yeah,
right,
whatever you
obviously.
need, right? Like,
Right.
first cut. Definitely.
Right.
No, I mean, I think there's a huge number of use cases, and it'll learn about you. I think that's an important and useful thing as well, right? The more it knows about you, the more it's going to be contextual about your use case. I think that's a very useful one, which kind of Google, I guess, with your unique browsing history.
So here's what I want with voice. You know what I want with voice? I want voice that just keeps interacting with me all day. Right? Just randomly comes up with figures out that I have a GPS location on my phone. It's watching where I'm going. I'm at a Safeway. Sure. It should know that I'm at a Safeway. And it should just say, hey, Eric, as long as we're at Safeway, why don't we, you thinking about doing some sugar corn pops or Captain Crunch or like something that's not, because I've sometimes been criticized that I like to watch network TV, right? Like now and then I'll turn on a network show and just watch it. It has commercials, right? And it's like, why do you do that, Eric? You got streaming services, you got Apple, you got Netflix and Hulu and Disney and everything, right? I got them all, right? But I like to sit and watch network TV because there's a randomness to what you're going to see when the television commercials come, right? I can watch a television show and know what I get with the show because it's the show and it's got a format, but you just never know what you're going to get with a TV commerel, right? You're going to get exposed to all kinds of things,
right?
And I feel like AI should be a little more random, right? It should be watching what I'm doing, and then throw in some randomness in my life, right? It knows so much stuff, like, hey, Eric, are you going to go test a shotgun today and shoot a bottle? Just random stuff that just
right. No, I think that's agentic workflows right there, and I think OpenAI has already mentioned that. The way these agentic workflows, the first thing that's going to start is when the AI initiates the conversation with you instead of you doing it, right?
Yeah, right.
That
exactly.
is the beginning of what you said, right?
What I'm doing.
I mean, if I'm at Town and Country, for example, right? And then
why don't you try the banana bread today?
You
had the scone 4
Yeah.
days in a row.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you need to pick up the salad mix,
Right.
For example,
Right.
hey, did you forget, right? Like, I mean, things like that. So I think that world is coming. That'd be amazing, actually, right? I think.
And I think when I think of the Optimus, is it Optimus Prime?
Optimus, I guess.
Just
Yeah.
Optimus.
Yeah.
When you think about that robot, I would expect that. That's what I'm hoping. You get some amount of personality. It's not just a robot and I tell it make my units, or I tell it, I come home and it goes and it says, hey, guess what? I made pizza tonight, right? Some randomness that it's like, okay, I didn't ask for that. I didn't, but you thought it and you dreamed it up and you're paying attention to the world, and it turns out there's a new sausage out there. I ordered on Amazon, it came, and I made this really amazing thing, and it's rated 5 Michelin stars, right? So I made it. Right.
That's the temperature control right there. What they call the creativity meter with an LLM, maybe right?
The temperature control.
Temperature control. So
I want it over at 9.
Over at 9. Right. Just make sure it doesn't burn down the house. That's all. In the process of doing it.
Right. And that's what I would say about the reasoning models and how to do this stuff, and then what's out there. And I think there's going to be more and more use cases, so maybe we should touch on them, because I think we touch on a lot of the technology when we're talking to our audience, is that we're mostly from Silicon Valley talking about the tech, right? But at the same time, we want to pop up into the marketing land a little bit and just talk about use cases, right? And the customer. right? And what are the customers experiencing when we talk about AI?
Right.
Because I think otherwise we get lost in the always investigating, and we have to bring it back to like,
yes,
actually these are really interesting from a just using them fun perspective.
user perspective. Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
Right.
No, I think you have a point. And some of these use cases, I mean, are phenomenal. I mean, I mean, yesterday when I was doing the demo, like it was a person from a foundational model company that I was showing it to. So, and
so tell me a little bit about your week here. You went into an OpenAI talk. What was the talk on?
So the talk
to,
was.
Is it NDA?
No, it's okay. I mean, I think it was about GTM mistakes that founders make. Go to market mistakes that founders make, right? Like so, and it was a fantastic talk. It was a
so what are the top
sales leader
mistakes
from
that
OpenAI.
GTM go to market people make when they go to market? They don't plan any go to market. That's what I've seen.
I don't know. I mean, there was a bunch
Everybody's worrying about the tech, and nobody actually worries about how they're going to actually sell it and go to market.
Oh my God, that's the first thing you got to address, right? That's the first thing you got to address. So, like, I think, I mean, distribution. Don't forget about distribution, right? Like I say, it's a big thing. And I mean, one of the things that sort of was shown on the screen was Slack versus Microsoft Teams, right? Slack being such an amazing product, actually, right? Like dwarfs in terms of distribution compared to Teams. So when Microsoft entered the picture, right, they were really able to, capture crazy market share just because of, their distribution ability, right? Like so.
Right, sure.
I mean, that's just one example, but
interesting.
the one quote unquote mistake I remember was around enterprise, right? Like don't sell to enterprises directly. Like it's long sales cycles. The fact that SOC 2 compliance, etc., purchasing, right? Like there's so many layers, right? It just takes a lot of time. That was one. Another one was like make sure you're talking to a decision maker, right? And not just to
don't sell to enterprises. That's a good one, because
not when you're really
you're not
small.
even allowed to run an AI in an enterprise these days, right? You're not allowed to have any AI. They don't even let us use ChatGPT, right? Like they're like, no, you're not allowed to use ChatGPT. You're not allowed to use any AI.
But do you have some internal AI engine that you can use? Like ChatGPT.
Yes,
right?
we have one. We have one that we use, and
Right.
we use private AIs for writing code, source code.
Right.
Like if you're doing development, you have to use this AI because it's learned all about our source techniques, and there's models for that. And then if you're doing marketing, then we have an AI that knows all our terms and knows best practices for ways to talk about things and what we're allowed to say, what we're not allowed to say, and things like that. And then there's also the guarantee that we have rights to everything that's in that AI, right? So that we don't have we hadn't trained it on some proprietary either marketing phrase or engineering code base that then we don't have rights to distribute.
That's right. That's right. I mean, that's that. That's sorry. I mean, that's the advantage of training the model on RAG systems.
Yeah. You need some water there, buddy. You need some water. That's okay. I was eating I was eating more sorbet, and I started with the podcast, and I had sorbet, and I realized that it was sitting here melting. And I'm like, I'm either going to lose my sorbet, or I'm going to have a spoonful every once in a while, just so that I don't waste it. It's going to melt.
So
but you got your tea. You're like a much more healthier guy than I am.
I mean, I need to go get some.
You're now
water.
out of tea. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the end of the show. We've been running for an hour, and it's been good to catch up to the news cycle and talk about Deepseek. My takeaway is that it was just a model that made a lot of news. It's interesting in that the way they layered it on other API models, and so that's kind of good. Right. So we learn a little bit about that, and then certainly what OpenAI came back with their reasoning model versus the standard model. Right. The reasoning model is free now, right? So you can go play reasoning model now. I don't know how you set it up if you don't have an enterprise account, a paid account.
No, even maybe free accounts probably have a drop down on the top on the right in the middle of the nav bar.
Right. I know I use the API and I have a paid account, so I'm usually writing code that's using the API. Right. And so that's how I choose. And the API has a way to select the model that you're using when you write code.
That's right.
But I haven't actually. I've always just gone into ChatGPT when I'm asking it.
About your scam, for example.
Stuff, right? I'm just using whatever they've got there default. I've never even looked to see how to change a model, so I have to go check that out and
that's awesome.
Get back on that. And it's 2025. Can you believe that? We got 30 minutes left, and we're 30 seconds left, and we're still we're already 1 month into January. We're
Yeah, I
done with
know.
January. We're into February, and it feels like
Time
I feel
flies.
like it's still November. Right? It's like here we are, and
Yes.
I think 2025 is going to. There has been so much politics and so much war and so much everything that like the news is just too
Yes.
much, right? Always going on.
I have a feeling I'm excited for what's coming up next week. I mean, I think with AI, it's kind of fun in the sense that the's so much activity happening.
I would just like it to slow down a little bit.
I don't know. I'm fine. I'm fine with the pace. It gives us stuff to.
I'm getting old, Gandalf. I don't feel it, but it's like butter spread over too much bread.
Too much bread.
Right.
Yes.
That's a quote from Lord of the Rings.
Cool.
All right. Well, great. Nice chatting with you. We'll be back again next week, and maybe we'll do a midweek next week.
Yes, probably.
Today's Friday, and we're live streaming on a Friday. So,
yes, maybe we should do it midweek.
Yeah,
middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good, Eric.
Thanks a lot.
You too. Bye.